Today is December 19th, which means that we're less than a week away from Christmas. But I canceled Christmas. I don't celebrate it. And I'll give you a few different reasons why. So, first of all, it doesn't present Messiah as he truly is. It doesn't give us the true, authentic picture of Yeshua. It presents a distortion of who he is and what happened during his birth. There's a lot of truth in Christmas. A lot of the story follows what actually happened, but there's other aspects that have been added on, and there's other aspects that have been twisted or distorted. So, for example, many people say that Jesus was born on December 25th, but that's just not true. That's more around the time of when all the pagans worship their sun god. They would have celebrations for the winter solstice, for the birth of the sun god. It was right around the end of December because that's when the winter solstice happens. Shortest day of the year, and then light starts returning. And so they would, worship the sun god. It's much more likely that Yeshua was born in September around either Feast of Trumpets or Feast of Tabernacles, which are the biblical feast days. And that makes a big difference because when we view it that way, we're viewing Yeshua in his proper context. Yeshua was a Jew. He came from the tribe of Judah as the Messiah of Israel. And through Israel, the whole world will be blessed. So imagine you were a Jewish person and you were truly seeking Messiah. If you looked at Christmas, you would not find Messiah. You would find this character named Jesus who lived in Israel but doesn't really connect with the Israelite people. And Christmas would look more like a pagan celebration, an idolatrous celebration. But if you present the birth of Yeshua in its proper context, where it's connected with a biblical feast, a Jewish person would look at that and be like, oh, so you follow a Messiah who was born during Feast of Tabernacles? I know that. That's one of the feasts we celebrate. So Yeshua was Jewish? Like that would connect with them. And that's why it's so important that we present Yeshua in the proper context, authentically as who he really is. That's why I use the name Yeshua. That's his Hebrew name. Jesus is a translated version, but Yeshua is what Mary and Joseph and the apostles, they all would have called him Yeshua, which means salvation. Or take the three kings, the three wise men, right? We've all seen the nativity scene where there's the manger and the animals and the shepherds, and then you have the three wise men with the three gifts. That's just not true. It looks pretty as a scene, but it's not how it actually happened. The Bible doesn't tell us how many wise men there were. There were just magi that came to visit Yeshua. And when they came, they found him in a house with his mother. So that means it didn't happen in the stable where he was born. It was much later. He might have even been a toddler by that point. So it's just a slight distortion, but when it's perpetuated like that, it gives us a false view of who Yeshua is. And if I'm going to worship Messiah, I want to worship the true Messiah. I want to worship him for who he truly is. And if I'm going to share him with people, I want to be able to share the truth about who he is. So it's really important. So that's the first reason. Another reason that I stopped celebrating Christmas is due to the pagan roots it has. So I already alluded to this somewhat when I talked about the sun god worship that happened, and that was prevalent in many cultures. The Greeks, the Egyptians, and the Romans, where a lot of Christianity started. And that's where Constantine formalized Christmas as a holiday that was required to be celebrated by Christians. And Constantine was a sun god worshiper. You know, it's said that he converted to Christianity, but there's controversy around that. A lot of the historical evidence suggests that was just a false ploy that he made. But even if he did, before that, he was clearly a sun god worshiper. And so when we celebrate Christmas, we don't realize that we've incorporated a lot of these rituals that were meant for pagan worship. And there's other parts too, you know, like Yule. Yule existed way before Yeshua was even born, and it involved human sacrifice. Or mistletoe. You know, people still kiss under the mistletoe. It used to be a sign of fertility for the pagans, and sometimes they would even hold orgies under it. So there's some very dark roots to the practices in Christmas. And a lot of it, again, was done in like antagonistically towards the Jews. They didn't like the Jews. The Romans hated the Jews, and many of the Christians who were Gentiles despised the Jews, and they didn't want to have anything to do with them. And so they tried to move as far away as possible from the Jewish, what they did, what the Jewish people did, and so they instituted these new holidays. This was especially the case with Easter, which became an alternative to Passover. But Yeshua is the Passover lamb. And many of the early Christians and the church fathers, the very early church, they celebrated Passover. But because it was also celebrated by the Jews, the Christians that were Gentiles wanted to distance themselves from that. And so there's just a lot of pagan stuff that's been incorporated. And then we get things like Santa Claus, which is more of a new invention, more of a modern thing, but also links back to some pagan stuff as well. It could be connected to Odin, who was a Norse god. But if you just look at what people do with Santa Claus now, that alone would be troubling. Like, people lie to their children and tell them there's this man who's omnipresent and omnipotent and will reward or punish them based on whether they're naughty or nice. They even make offerings of milk and cookies to him. That may seem just like a fun, innocent thing, but when you think about it, they're actually teaching children how to worship a false god, because that's how you would worship one. And we're teaching them, well, we're not, people teach them this. At the same time, they're trying to tell them that Jesus came to save them from their sins. So we have two different characters who are godlike, and we have two different gospels. One is that Jesus came as Messiah and offered himself as a free gift to save us from our sins. And the other one is works-based. If you are good, then you'll get gifts. If you're bad, you'll get punished, which is totally contrary to the gospel. But we present these two visions of godlike characters at the same time on the same holiday, and we tell children that they're both real when only one is real and the other is totally false, and people deceive their children for years about this, and they lie to them. And you might think it's just an innocent, fun thing, but I think that's very damaging, because trust is one of the most fundamental things for relationships and healthy relationships. And then just another final reason is that the world loves Christmas. If Christmas was something that was truly honoring to God, do you think the world would embrace it like it has? The world hates things of God. Secular culture hates things that honor God. So it's a big sign that what we're doing isn't really honoring God if secular culture has embraced it. And the reason they've embraced it is because it's a huge moneymaker. Christmas is one of the most commercialized aspects of our society that there is. It's why we now have Black Friday and Cyber Monday and Giving Tuesday. Because these big corporations that are selling things and retail stores and stuff realize that people spent a lot more money right around Christmas, and they just extended that to keep people in the stores as much as possible, and they make a ton of money off of it. So it's this big, extravagant, luxurious time of consumerism. It's all about the lights and the music and the parties and all of this stuff. When Yeshua was born and put in the manger, they didn't even have a place to stay. They were homeless. It's so contrary to what actually happened. And so I want to close up with how important it is that we present Messiah in the proper context. We present him as he truly is. That's so important. And we can do that by celebrating the biblical feasts. So, Day of Atonement and Feast of Trumpets, Feast of Tabernacles, Passover, First Fruits, Shavuot. Like, these different feasts will help us understand who he truly is. So, that's all I got for today. Peace.